Hey guys, welcome back to another video. In this video, I'm going to be talking about passed pawns in chess. So passed pawns are generally thought to be very good, but sometimes they could betray your army in chess. Like, sometimes they can block your pieces, and it's just occupying a nice square that, maybe a knight, one of your own knights could have been on. So passed pawns, usually they're good, but sometimes they're bad. So I'm going to talk more about this stuff later, so let's get started. So there's two questions that you gotta ask yourself to determine if a passed pawn is useful or not. So the first question is to ask, is there play elsewhere? Is there a lot of action, a lot of play on another side of the board that doesn't involve the passed pawn? If it does, then that passed pawn is probably going to be useful for the person who has the passed pawn because it kind of acts as an insurance, right? So if there's play on the other side of the board, it doesn't concern the passed pawn on the other side of the board, then all that action on the other side of the board, pieces can be traded off, and then that passed pawn will just will be useful because it's insurance basically. Just think of it as that way. So here, white he has a very active passed pawn, and black is trying his best to stop this passed pawn. So black can't really do anything about this passed pawn. I mean, he could try to try to blockade it, but it's gonna be very hard for him to do so because white's passed pawn on c4, it's pretty well protected. It's protected by a pawn first of all. So if black tries to capture the pawn on c4, black's b pawn just comes up and takes back, and it won't be a very nice trade. So this is one example of a passed pawn. So white has the passed pawn, and passed pawns, they're good because there's no enemy pawns that could attack them. So here, in this case, white's c pawn is a passed pawn because there's no enemy pawn on the b file or the d file that could attack the c pawn. So it's very good for white because now white's c pawn could just run down the board and try to get a promotion or something. So the next question that you want to ask yourself is the pawn blockaded, or can it be blockaded? So here in this case, white has a passed pawn on d5, but it's being blocked by that knight on d6, and it's not really going anywhere. I mean, yes, white has an extra pawn, but that pawn is not really going to do much. In fact, unuseful or not useful passed pawns, they're usually bad for the person who has them, because now, for example here, that square on d5 could have been a nice home for the white knight or the white rooks, and instead is being occupied by that d pawn, and it's not doing much. That d pawn isn't doing much, but if it's replaced with the knight, it could patrol so many other squares, and it kind of blocks the file for the rooks. So the d file could have been so much better for the white rooks on d1 and d2, but instead there's the pawn on d5 blocking those two rooks, and the rooks are now inactive. If that d pawn was not there, white would have a better advantage, even though he'd be down one pawn. If the d pawn on d5 was not there, white would have a bigger advantage than here, because now the white rooks would have it would control the whole d file it would attack the knight on d6, and white could also like put his knight on d5. So sometimes a passed pawn could be like really bad for a person who has it, depending on whether it's blocked or not. Now, this last example is just a board with a passed pawn, and as you can see here, white has a passed pawn on d7, and it's pretty bad for black, because black here, he really can't do anything about it. So if you're playing against a passed pawn, you want to keep this in mind. Make sure that the passed pawn does not get past its 5th rank. So for black, he doesn't want it to get past the 5th rank. For white, he does not want any of black's passed pawns to get past the 4th rank. Like just pretend there's a little divider there between the 5th and the 4th rank. And if you're playing against a passed pawn, you want to make sure that pawn doesn't jump over that divider. Because this is what would happen. Black is in a very, very bad position. So like this is gonna be bad because black, that passed pawn for on d7, it's just like restricting all of black's play. Black's pieces are not active at all, and like if the queen moves, then the black queen moves from d8 to like another square, then it would be pretty good for white, because then the pawn could just jump down to d8, and it's not going to be that great. So that would be about it for today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you guys did, leave a like, subscribe, and click that notifications bell to see more chess videos.